have to like talk about it.
That's actually here.
The red. Did you get the job? Where'd you get the job? Oh, that's all. Yeah, I don't know how the rest of you will react, but sometimes I feel like that's a little too radical for a while.
You actually thought you could get a spot.
I feel like you're going to be wearing the pulse. It's a great pulse.
Okay, what a rookie mistake. What a rookie mistake. Just pull up and
Yeah, I saw you running.
Hillary's in my
Good evening and welcome to the March meeting of the Granville Schools Board of Education. If you'd all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Fiorello, please call the roll.
Mr. Miller?
Here.
Mr. Wolf?
Here.
Ms. Deeds? Here. Ms. Shaw? Here. Ms. O'Day? Here.
Wonderful to see you all here, and many of you here for our commendations, which is the first thing on the agenda. So, Mr. Brown.
Let's start with the approval of the agenda, and there is an addendum.
Oh, well, thank you very much for reminding me of that. So, the agenda is copies over here for anybody that wants one. Do I have a motion from someone?
Second.
With
Ms. Deeds?
Yeah.
Ms. Shaw? Aye. Ms. O'Day? Aye. Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye. All right, now the good part.
All right. I actually thought all of you came for my board policy update. I'm a little disappointed. It's a riveting hour worth of policy talk. Just kidding. All right, so we have a great smattering of sports athletes from the winter season, and we're excited to talk a little bit about their accomplishments. We also get to recognize a couple of coaches and a teacher. So good commendations tonight. We're going to start with wrestling. We want to congratulate the Blue Ace wrestlers Peyton Costa and Carson Miller, who competed at the OHSAA State Wrestling Tournament, and Cameron Hickey, who qualified as a state alternate. Over the season, Peyton had a 33-10 record with 24 pins. He is the champion of the Granville Invitational, the LCL Championship, Sectional Championship, received the third place bronze medal in districts, qualified for state, and was the Dispatch All-Metro first team. He also is a two-time district qualifier and is the fifth sophomore in school history to qualify for the state. Carson was the team captain, had a record of 24-1, had 18 pins, was LCL champion, section champion, district champion, and district all-metro first team. He also had, he also was a two-time district finalist, two-time state qualifier. Cameron had a record of 40-9 and is the team leader for wins, had 29 pins and is the team leader for pins, and is the champion of the Granville Invitational, champion of the Claymont Invitational, LCL champion, sectional champion, and placed 5th in district and is a state alternate. We are very proud of our wrestling team and their accomplishments. Are they? So, Glenn, will you take a picture? Because we don't have anyone else here. Parents can take a lot of pictures.
All right. Your shot.
All right, thank you. I was going to put you in a Half Nelson, but didn't think I'd survive. All right. Next, we have our swimmers. The 2021 swim season had a number of challenges, including not returning to our home pool at Denison University. But you would never have known it from their performance this year. With only 4.5 hours of water practice each week, the team truly exceeded all expectations set for them. Under the leadership of our 4 team captains, Avery Kester, Graham Mayberry, Julian Rogers, and Avery Spiker, and the coaches, the girls team finished 14-3, and the boys team finished 13-4. Both teams swam a number of Division I powerhouse teams throughout the season and did not lose to a conference opponent all season. It's amazing. Additional, you can clap, go. All right, so additional accolades include a first place girls finish and second place boys finish at the Athens Invitational, girls and boys teams winning the LCL championship meet, both teams finishing second overall in the sectional meet, and the girls team placing third with the boys team placing 4th at the district meet. Additionally, Coach Tyler Paulson was awarded the LCL Coach of the Year with Avery Spiker, Hannah Harden, and Graham Mayberry winning the LCL Swimmers of the Year. 12 swimmers competed at the state meet for Granville. The girls team finished 15th while the boys team finished 18th. Hannah Harden, Lydia Sturgeon, Brooke Lemire all competed individually as well as the relay contributors. Hannah finished 10th overall in the 50 freestyle, 6th overall in the 100 freestyle, and earned all Ohio honors in both events. Brooke Lemire competed individually in the 200 freestyle and finished 18th overall. Lydia Sturgeon competed individually in the 100 backstroke and finished 19th overall. Additionally, the girls' 200 medley relay, comprised of Lydia Sturgeon, Avery Spiker, Brooke Lemire, and Caroline Otter, finished 15th and earned all Ohio honors. The 200 freestyle relay of Lydia Sturgeon, Caroline Otter, Avery Kester, and Hannah Harden finished 14th overall and also earned all Ohio honors. The 400 freestyle relay of Brooke Lemire, Avery Kester, Lydia Sturgeon, and Hannah Harden finished 6th overall, also earning all Ohio honors. Liz Hedger competed in the para division of the state championship for Granville. Liz helped advocate for the post-season opportunity for para athletes with OHSAA and has been very pleased with the progress made thus far. Liz finished 4th in the 50 freestyle and 7th in the 100 backstroke. Let's give our girls a round of applause. I appreciate all the detail. Where's Hillary? There you go. All right. We're going to get all of them up here at the end. For the boys, Julian Roger and Graham Mayberry competed individually at the state meet. Julian competed in the 50 freestyle where he finished 13th overall, earning all Ohio honors. Graham competed individually in the 200 freestyle where he finished 14th overall, earning all Ohio honors, and the 100 backstroke where he finished 23rd overall. Graham is also the school record holder in the men's 100 backstroke. In addition, the 200 freestyle relay team of Julian Rogers, Jacob Teeter, Joshua Remlinger, and Graham Mayberry competed, earning all Ohio honors, finished 7th overall. Over the span of 7 days, this relay team broke their school record the school record from 2003-4 on 3 different occasions. Their final time was 1 minute 28 seconds, 28:03. Surpassing the previous school record by 1/8 of a second, which in swimming is a lot. The same 4 swimmers competed in the 400 freestyle relay where they finished 10th overall, earning all Ohio honors. Dakota Ballinger, also, did I slaughter it? Ballergen, right? Valagerin. All right, sorry, buddy. All right, also attended as the team's alternate for the meet. So congratulations to the boys team. All of our swimmers, including their coaches, Hillary and Tyler Paulson, come on up and we'll get a team picture. All right, I gotta get going.
All the boys together.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'll look at it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. You're welcome. Because we're already closed.
Yeah, this team doesn't like each other at all.
All right. Get out of the way for the parents.
Yeah, let the paparazzi move.
Sorry. Go ahead. I did something. Go ahead.
All right, congratulations. And for you boys that dyed your hair a different color, let's hope it's out soon. At least your parents hope it's out soon.
At least they have something to die.
Yes, that's a very good point. I shouldn't be talking, should I? So, all right, our next group is our indoor track athletes. Congratulations are in order for several GHS athletes that placed at the indoor state track meet. Dylan Christian ran the 800 meter with a time of 1:52:37. He was the state champion. Now he's the school record holder and the state meet record. 6th in the nation. The girls 4x800 team took third place with a time of 9 minutes 30 seconds and 9:30:11. Lillian Eccles, Kara Bergeron, Sophia Poling, and Zoe Lehman. Congratulations to them. Regina Rose ran the 3200 and placed 4th with a time of 11 flat. That's pretty impressive. Kara Wildermuth did the weight throw, took 5th place at 40 feet 7 inches. Nora Carrington, triple jump, 7th place with 32 9.5 inches. And Lily Eccles, 800 meters, 8th place with a time of 2:22:56. Congratulations to all of our track athletes. Track athletes, come on up. Now I'm going to tell a story after we take pictures. Okay, did you all see Mikayla DeJaneiro win the national championship? Yeah. Awesome. If you have not seen the video, go and YouTube it. Mikayla was a graduate of 2016, went to the University of Michigan, and ran all 4 years there, graduated, and then went to get her master's at Colorado, but because of COVID, was able to reestablish 2 years of eligibility, and she won the state, or the Division I national championship in the mile indoor track. It is the coolest race you'll ever see. She likes to run from behind. With 2 laps left, she was dead last, and she won by 20 or 30 yards. Wow. And then quoted her coach and saying, my coach, high school coach said, if you open up the door, you better kick it shut. A couple of the coaches, girls, not boys, you can sit down. All of our athletics require dedicated coaches. And so all the coaches here, please stand up that are supporting us. And around the clock, and we appreciate their willingness to coach our team. So thank you very much, coaches. Rex, I know he was here, so I'm sure it is. All right, thank you. So last, we'd like to congratulate our GMS Industrial Technology teacher, Christian Rinke, for being named this year's winner of the You Make a Difference Award, sponsored by Coughlin Automotive. Christian was nominated by a student Peyton Goss. In her nomination, Peyton states that Mr. Rinke has always tried to make a positive impact on students' lives. Mr. Rinke deserves this award most because of how caring he is towards others and how compassionate he is towards helping each and every one of his students. He's a great listener and knows just what to say at the right time. Indeed, we are extremely grateful to have Christian Rinke as a teacher of ours here in Granville Schools, and congratulations to you, Kristen, and thank you for your nomination. Peyton, come on up. Now, this is the end of our program. You can stick around for a board policy update. Some might, but I have a feeling most of you are going to hit the door. So thank you very much for coming on a beautiful evening, and congratulations to all of our winter athletes.
Congratulations, bud. Hey, Costa, congratulations, bud. Thank you. Yeah, good job. You thought you could park in the lot right there.
Okay, I'm back up. Why I sat down. Good news is the board policy update will be relatively brief tonight.
Are you using that?
I am.
Okay.
But
Okay, I'll just figure out which way to turn. I love turning. It's coming.
there we go. Okay, as you know, we use OSBA's board policy update team to keep up to date with all the legal reference changes and all the things that change legislatively, and they provide updates about 3 or 4 times a year for us to consider as board policy. A lot of the ones that I will mention tonight, really there isn't much latitude in the board policy. It is really a legal reference change or a legal update that is required by law. So tonight, It looks like there's several pages, but they're all kind of connected. So there's a couple of themes here. So the first one that I'll talk about is the student conduct on district-managed transportation. And there was some a definition of an expansion and a change to OAC 338303, which defines conduct on transportation, and it had tweaks in what was labeled as inappropriate conduct, and it's a requirement for us to have board policy related to student conduct, which we do. So we are in compliance with this, but it is something that changed with the legal reference change. Professional staff contracts and compensation, they expanded the definition of administration to include central office personnel in their definition, so they changed that related to that board policy. Educational options. So under OAC 333509, Section B, number 9, there is a whole new section of content related to educational options for students. And those educational options include, post-secondary, college credit plus, and most of the changes that occurred were related to college credit plus as far as the changes of language. College credit plus is the other thing that changed. As I mentioned in Senate Bill, in the OAC that I referenced earlier, they changed that specific language to tweak college credit plus, which has a ripple effect through multiple policies. Blended learning is also an update from the Senate Bill 229. They define blended, remote, and online now differently than they did pre-pandemic. They learned a little. So the other items are related to items that I already covered, but they're referenced in multiple policies, so we update them all throughout the policy guide. Any questions about any of the policy? And again, this is a first reading, all very benign, all legal reference and legal update changes. So, I told you it'd be quick. Thank you. I kind of lied to the group, said it was going to be long.
Scare them off.
Yeah, I scared them off. So, yeah. And that concludes my report, and I'll turn it over to Brittany for the monthly financial.
All right, so we have our February financial report, and first looking at our cash balance. So the blue bars on the graph here represent the current year cash balance by month compared to the gray bars, which are prior year. So you can see that cash is up about $5.8 million compared to last year, and that makes sense with where we are in the levy cycle. And I've been talking about month over month about the phase-in of the income tax. And this is exactly the effect that we're seeing. This is where we'd expect to be during the phase-in, building our cash balance. And then it's also cyclical throughout the year, where we have low points in July and January, and then build up to the high point in March and April. So just a reminder, though, that income tax will be up for renewal coming up this fall. So it feels like we've just been talking about the phase-in, and we're already up for renewal. So just wanted to put that on the radar. So looking at revenue just for the month of February compared to last February, the only item of note is state revenue. Looks like there's a significant difference there to $258,000. And that's really an issue in prior year with an accounting adjustment that we had to do, as well as the implementation of the new funding formula. Then year to date, local tax revenues, so property tax and the income tax combined are up to $1.2 million. State revenue is up for about $400,000, and that again is the new funding formula. because of the inclusion of those wellness and success funds that were previously in a restricted fund, so they didn't show up on our report here. So those are the big differences. And then on state revenue, I just wanted to give a very high level update. Now that we're actually receiving payments based on the new funding formula, I wanted to compare where did we expect to be in the forecast in November compared to what are the ODE Foundation reports showing us now. And as you can see, very little difference. So we are very close, which we would expect to see since we are on guarantee, but just wanted to kind of do a touch base there and know that we won't have significant changes coming in May. On the expenditure side, for the month of February, again, we had some accounting adjustments in prior year under the salary and benefits line item. We were able to last year utilize some ESSER dollars to recode some sub-salaries. So it's making the difference look a little bit higher this year. But it's really just due to an issue last year. And same thing under all of our expenses. We were able to utilize ESSER dollars for some supply line items. Year-to-date expenditures, we have the usual salary and benefits increases due to base salaries as well as steps. And then we're also seeing, so it looks a little unusual, the purchase service line item actually looks down compared to prior year, which is due to the funding formula no longer having those tuition payments being paid out. But that means that it's being made up for in other areas. So we're seeing an increase in utilities, we're seeing an increase in fuel that, we're all experiencing our personal lives, we're seeing here too. You just can't see it very well because it's a little hidden with the tuition adjustment, but we'll talk about that more with the forecast coming up in May. So after adjusting for the insurance and the tuition line items, expenditures are actually up 1.2 over prior year.
Would the ESSER funding have an impact on what we see in general fund expenditures as well? Because we've shifted some expenses, or are those?
Yeah, to some extent, there are some expenses that we paid for out of ESSER dollars that could have been paid for out of general fund. But by and large, what we used the ESSER dollars for were new expenditures or one-time expenditures that we would not necessarily have had if not for COVID. Okay, then looking at just our COVID-specific related funds. So you can see it's a lot of different sources to track now. And not much change over last month. So the blue section of the bars represents the total expenditures, what we've actually spent to date in each of these sources. And then the orange is kind of the remaining balance. So we're not going to see significant change from here on out from month to month, because what we have right now are just some salaries of some intervention positions that we added at the elementary level. So it's just minimal payroll amounts that will change from month to month. The large ESSER General Assembly allocation, that will jump up when we finish the HVAC project at the elementary. So we won't see much change there until we pay that bill once the project is completed. And then this just is the detail. I know it's too small to see, but just wanted that included for the official record. And I've taken off the sources that are fully expended at this point. So we're only looking at what is left to spend. And then cash reconciliation. So just wanted to point out the Red Tree investment. So we know that we started with $5 million there, and we would expect it to grow over time, which it will. But we're also paying that administrative fee for them to manage those funds. So interest is not paid in equal installments month over month. So that balance is down right now just because we haven't really earned interest on those funds, but we do pay the administrative fee monthly. And that is all that I have. Any other questions or comments?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, yeah, you're gonna do this, or are we gonna do this?
I'm just leaving it on so we don't turn the screen off.
Very good. We've reached the time in our agenda where we welcome public comment. If there's anyone that wishes to offer a message, they can speak up to 5 minutes. Please step to the podium, state your name and address, and then you may speak to the board.
Are you recognizing me, Mr. Miller?
Anyone who wishes to make a public comment is welcome to. Ms. Leckner, we'd love to hear from you.
So my main purpose of being here tonight, well, not my main purpose, but the reason I'm making a public comment is because I have to apologize for last time I was here. I know better that you're not supposed to answer the question of the kids that are up here speaking. I forgot. I was so excited about the fact that they were having goats instead of alpacas in Johnstown, because I'm involved in that program in Johnstown with the kids that are leaving school with autism and having an occupation. And also because she talked about the home for the goats, and I'm also involved in homelessness, so I forgot myself for a few minutes. I hope you forgive me.
No.
Since I've been here, I've got a lot more questions.
Well, you are always welcome to reach out to any of the board members.
When do I get my bill for my school tax?
You are always welcome to reach out to the board members or our treasurer or superintendent when there's questions like that. You're welcome to reach out to us individually, or for a question like taxation, you could reach to our treasurer.
Is the bill going to be sent to me?
So it's hard for us to answer individual questions like that, but possibly Mrs. Triolo could follow up with you after the meeting in order to kind of get some clarity on that. And you're always welcome at the meetings, not a problem. And for the record, could you state your name and address?
What?
Could you state your name and address, please?
Barbara Leckner, and I live at 21 Denison Court in Granville.
Thank you.
Okay, and I wonder too, with all these giving out vouchers to private schools, is it going to hurt you? Is it going to hurt Granville very much?
Those are great questions that we're going to take into account for sure, and I'm not sure I can fully address that right now.
Our school funding for 20 years, how long is that going to go on? And then I also wondered if in the budget there are allocations for mental health, because I'm hearing that kids are having a lot of mental health problems after the pandemic. And I also wanted to tell you that my elderly neighbors just came down with COVID, and the BA.2 variant is more contagious than the other variants have been. So that's the reason I'm asking.
Thank you for your comments.
And Barbara, I'll reach out and answer some of those questions that you had, okay?
I didn't know how to,
Yep.
I just caught on when I was listening to the talk.
That's fine. Thank you. Please.
So good evening, I'm Craig Hester. I have no goats. I have no alpacas. I live at 108 Hawks Cove in Granville. Have been a resident for 22 years. I will be on the net positive side for Granville schools here in 6 months as my fourth child will graduate this year, and now it's just pure income from my property tax. So I wanted to talk tonight about two things before my kids depart school. One is athletics, and two is our relationship as a school board with Denison. So a couple things. First is athletics. So as a parent of a swimmer, my daughter Avery was here tonight. You go through this process. It's a lonely sport. It's a lonely spectator sport. And said, where is Granville administration? At the LCL meet, at the sectional meet, at the district meet, nobody from Granville is present. So in typical Granville parent fashion, I sent an email and said, you know, where is everyone? Why is this? Why are they at football and basketball? And I got a response from Matt Durst, which was a great response, but it was, realize we have 29 varsity sports and a robust arts program. We're busy. So again, as a good parent, I didn't accept that. So I met with Matt and Josh Duvall. And what I came back with was things that I learned. So as a 22-year resident, there's things I learned I didn't know before. Things like, we have 29 varsity sports. We have 13 middle school sports. Fall, winter, and spring, 823 events go on with athletics. We have 2 full-time athletic department employees. So we have a problem in terms of, as a parent saying, where is everyone? Well, how do 2 people cover 823 events? They simply don't, right? You know, so part of that we dug in further and said, okay, how does Granville FTEs for athletics compared to Lincoln County. Zanesville's the closest. Zanesville has 22 varsity sports. They have 3 full-time employees. Upper Arlington, so well, what about Metro Columbus? Upper Arlington, 31 sports, 4 FTEs. New Albany, 29, 5 FTEs. We have 2. Ohio State has 36 varsity sports. So we're not far off of a college in terms of what we provide our kids the opportunity to do, which is awesome. You know, the indoor track team was here. That wasn't possible until we funded them. However, as a board, your prior board funded sports to the point and level that says, we can't cover it. So what's interesting to me, and I asked Jeff came to the state meet, which was, we were very thankful to see, and so did Josh.
And senior night.
And senior night. But what would happen if a kid slipped and fell and got hurt on the pool deck, right? There's nobody there. You know, we're blessed in Granville. We have parents who go, right? Parents are at meets, parents are at events. If your kid gets hurt, you'll go with them to the hospital. What if there's no parent there? So I asked our swim coach, what happens if there's no parent? She would have to leave. So the coach would have to leave the meet, go in the ambulance, go in the helicopter, but be with that child and either cancel the event or leave the meet. So again, I think we're lucky, but that makes me nervous, and it should make you nervous to say, what happens if, you know? And unfortunately, it's probably not an if, but when. When that happens, how do we handle it? So what's interesting is OHSAA requires us to have administrators at football, girls basketball, boys basketball, and I think they encourage you to have boys and girls soccer, both home and away. And part of that is managing spectators, right? If there's a spectator in the crowd that's out of hand, somebody's got to handle that. And as the home host, we take on that responsibility to manage the event. So this was frankly all new to me. But the challenge is, okay, so what? I think a couple things. One is parents need to know. When you sign up at a fall sports meeting or spring sports meeting, you're taking on responsibility for Granville schools. So if you're in the stands and parents get out of hand, which is happening more and more often, somebody has to be responsible as a parent, as a spectator, to say, enough is enough, and I will remove them or work with the school to do that. So it was news to me, and I will say as a parent, my first was frustration with the schools, and the second is a realization to say, you need more than 2 people. As we continue to grow, as I see your budget, the allocation, it used to be 3, we reduced it to 2. I think we're really treading on thin ice by trying to pull this all off with 32 sports, 823 events, and 2 people. So that's one. The second is Denison. So again, I think related to swimming, but you know, I want to talk about the relationship with Denison because it's changed. It's changed over the last 3 to 5 years. You know, so Denison and Granville have coexisted, you know, since 1831. So 191 years, Denison's been part of the Granville community. I don't think, and Jeff, correct me if I'm wrong, there's never been a formal agreement between Denison and Granville as it relates to what we do, what they do, what we charge, what they charge. It's been a handshake, right? It's been a partnership. We've been good neighbors, we've been good partners. But something's changed the last few years. Clearly COVID has a lot to do with that. But I think we, the school district, have done more than our part to accommodate Denison. So what do I mean? We opened up our stadium 27 times since February of 2021 to let their sports teams use our stadium. We did put the lights on, pick up garbage, open the gates. We allowed the Denison baseball team to use our indoor batting cages since February of 21, literally every day. So when we're not there, they're in there using our batting cages. We allow Denison students to use our land lab for classes. We have allowed dance students to use GES for an event. We've allowed Denison students to student teach in our schools, right? How much have we charged Denison to do that? 0. We've not charged them anything because we're a good partner. So let me reverse that for a moment. What has Denison done for us lately? They closed the pool for 2 years, right? I understand it's COVID. Canyon kept their pool open the whole time and invited high school teams in to use their pool. High school swimmers had to scramble. So Hillary and Tyler, my daughter, so very limited high school swim time, so she's on a club team based in Denison, had to go to Zanesville. Driving home from Zanesville at 10 p.m., 3 nights a week this past winter is scary to a parent, right? Leaving the Newark Y at 9:30 at night means your kid's not in bed until after 11 p.m. So those are ramifications of it. We've asked to use indoor track at Denison. The answer is no. Our kids in cross country are not allowed to run on the hills on campus. The answer is no. They cannot come on campus. We've stopped asking because we already know the answer. As we look at things like that, the Denison charged when we used the pool, every swim meet cost $1,500 that we get a bill for. Our 2020 practice time was $7,000 out of our budget. Hillary has triplets. 2 years ago, was practicing. Tyler got her a chair. The swim person there came over and said, no, you've not paid for that chair. So put the chair away, and she's pregnant with triplets. So we've turned into this tit for tat thing with Denison. So my request to the board is either A, we start charging them for everything they're using of ours the way they do with us, or the board sits across the table from Denison and says, let's figure this out. We're either neighbors and partners, or we're each generating revenue from each other. But I'm afraid for the future if we can't figure out how to work together, and I think we've avoided working together for a long time. Okay?
Thank you. Okay. Thank you for your comments. Very good. And thank you for attending and thank you for your comments. We have time on the agenda now for a board discussion, and we have listed our strategic planning task force. Do you have any update for that, or do you want to go through some slides first?
So Brittany and I are going to tag team this and start with some slides from a previous or a recent presentation to the Granville Chamber of Commerce. And Brittany, you attended, so you can start off, but and give context to what we're about to share.
Yeah, so about a year ago, the Economic Development Committee of the Chamber was taken over by new leadership to generate some new energy into that committee. So for over a year, the committee, which I am a part of personally as a representation of the school district, have been working to put together an economic development plan. So obviously pre-Intel. So really what was presented at Wednesday's luncheon is a culmination of that year's worth of work. So the Chamber, in partnership with the village and township, which is known as the Coalition, have funded an initial investment to bring on board a consultant, Jim Lenner, to really execute the plan. So his presentation Wednesday to the Chamber was an explanation of that initial plan, and then also, since now we know of Intel, how has Intel changed that, and some background information on that piece as well.
Yeah.
So first, Jim walked through the project outcomes. So what the committee and chamber and coalition have put together, and what Jim has been brought on board to do. So really it is to review and do an assessment of the adopted strategy and identify key sites, buildings, corridors where we can identify as the priorities for economic development. So really identifying what we already have that is suitable for development. Also utilizing or identifying what infrastructures are already in place, what infrastructure is needed, and coming up with a strategy for that, because infrastructure drives development. And then also investigating and looking at options for different public incentives, which is really where we see the district's role specifically from a financial perspective, because we are not financial partners in this endeavor. We cannot be. We cannot use our funds to pay for this economic development consultant, but certainly we can partner as part of the public incentive piece. And then the additional outcomes, develop business retention strategies. So not only are we looking at bringing in new development, but also looking at ways to retain our existing businesses. And not only looking at businesses, but also developing a housing strategy. Obviously, that piece specifically becomes very important when we start talking about Intel. Develop a map of Greater Granville. So the chamber is the Greater Granville Chamber of Commerce. So there's always been some, I don't want to say confusion, but just lack of clarity of what boundaries specifically we're talking about there. And this next point is actually kind of funny because we really did talk about this prior to Intel, but identifying industry-specific opportunities. So who do we want? Going out and attracting the businesses and the industries that we want to have here in Granville and coming up. Those that are listed are just ideas, they're not specifics. And then lastly, this point was added. Identify strategies to guide, harness the benefits, and mitigate potential negative effects of Intel. So that was added kind of as a last bullet point, but is also going to be interwoven through all of these other objectives as we move along through the project.
So we want to kind of talk a little bit about and frame kind of the Intel impact. And as a school district, we have talked about the formation of our task force, which will probably meet for the first time in April after spring break, so that we can engage and set kind of parameters and a scope of work. But we've talked about, and it's on the agenda tonight, as far as an action item, the first action item of the evening is related to the data that will be collected by cooperative strategies. So we're going to be looking at enrollment, facility capacity, housing analysis and residential capacity, and then programming across that task force. Because what we want to do is understand what is the potential impact on a community that is close enough to the Intel project that it will drive changes specifically to our community. So one of the things that we did was we started to think about Chandler, Arizona, and I happened to just be there last week. But Jim also did an analysis just to give you a little case study of Chandler, Arizona, which is about 30 miles outside of Phoenix. So it's very similar as Newark is to downtown Columbus. But it's been there since 1980. It has 12,000 employees. They use 30% of the city's water capacity. They have 6 Fabs operating in 2 sites, and 2 more Fabs coming with 3,000 more employees. And the average total employee compensation is $148,000 a year, and that's 2017 data. So again, just to give you a comparative analysis based on what we've been hearing with an actual case study. So they have a couple of campuses. What I wanted to do is just kind of highlight, where the Fab is. It's in the lower portion of that picture, but just to the right, there's a roadway there, and then next to it is pretty dense housing, okay? And then if you go to the next slide, you'll see another Fab, which is, again, there's 2 sites there. This is the second Fab, and you can also see the density of the housing around that facility to accommodate the workforce needs. But I think it's important to go back and look at what it looked like in the 1970s. So well, go ahead, that's okay. I'll start at where we were, go back. If you look at their population growth, in the 1970s, they were about 13,000 residents, okay? Today, they are over 275,000 residents. So again, that's a pretty steep incline, but when we get to the pictures of what it looked like in 1970, you'll have a little bit of an idea of how that growth occurred. So in Chandler, you can see how the density kind of grew over time. So this is kind of a graph that animates, and it shows as we get closer to present day how much of Chandler is actually populated. And you can see that it became relatively dense over the years, stopping in 2010. Yes, go ahead.
What are those arrows?
That's where the Fabs sites are, that's where the manufacturing plants are.
Yep, they're the two sites within Chandler, Arizona.
Each color is it's kind of hard to read on the screen, but each color that pops on there is a different decade.
Okay, so
Yeah.
it just didn't grow as, I kind of assumed housing would grow down there a little bit quicker. And this is not necessarily housing that's growing, right? This is just whatever.
Yeah.
Total
Development. So the next screen, I think, shows the 1976. So that is that current picture of that fab that had all the housing around it. If you look, it was all residential. I mean, all farmland. And now it's pretty much all residential. If you look at the bottom of that picture, there's Route 202. Picture that being 161. They're very almost mirror-like in relationship to 161 and the Fab site. And
Jug Street there.
Yeah, right, exactly. Mink, Jug, Beach, all those that are going north and south, very similar in structure to the Chandler facility. But you can see the density that's now populated around it. Now, that site is also in, so the Intel site is in Johnstown. What is around that is a lot of farmland in the Northridge School District. Granville is in a very different position versus what we're seeing here, but there is going to be an impact. What this study and what this task force is going to look at is try and give our best guess of what that impact is across enrollment facilities, housing, and programming. So I have developed a relationship with Superintendent Narducci, who is the superintendent of Chandler Schools. They have 45,000 students. They have 5,000 staff members, and they are interested in doing a portrait of a graduate. And we happen to know how to do that. So I said, well, if you give me information about this, I'll give you information about that. And so we're going to be working together a little bit here in the near future. So we just wanted to share this information with you because I think it contextualizes why the conversation is necessary. But here's another important piece of information. Right at the center of that kind of bullseye is where the Intel site will go. Those circles around are driving distance. So if you look at the first ring, Granville is within that ring. And so we need to understand that in proximity to the Intel sites, we are going to be a desirable location. We have an excellent reputation for rich academic performance. We have a great portrait of a graduate. We have a well-rounded athletic and arts program that Craig just referenced. And so we have a lot of amenities and a lot of things that people will look for in a public school system. And therefore, we will be attractive. And so going through this task force is going to be absolutely critical to plan for the future. We do not want to be behind the growth. I don't know that we can get up in front of the growth, but at least we want to keep pace. So that's what we're going to be trying to do in relationship to this project. And again, it's important to understand that they've done these types of projects in multiple locations. So learning from what they've done in the past will help inform what they might have in mind here. And I believe that they're going to be very good partners with us over time. It's just they're trying to get their project done and get production going by 2025. Therefore, it's going to be a little bit more time until we can have some direct contact with their folks to figure out the impact. So the village and the township have met, the chamber is working, we're going to be working, all of us are communicating, which is good because we all have to be on the same page, and we're going to lead Granville schools through whatever comes our way with a very data-driven approach and with a mind to the history and context of Granville that we all love. So,
are you in touch with the Northridge superintendent?
I talked with him quite a bit, yes.
Okay.
The treasurer and superintendent actually attended the chamber luncheon on Wednesday, and they'll be joining. They were excited to make connections. They cross over, they have 11 townships in their district. So we're very fortunate that we have great communication with our major township. But I just can't even imagine trying to manage those relationships with 11 different governing bodies. So they were excited to hear this information and make those connections with us as well. So.
The Licking County superintendents communicate quite regularly together. And what I love about this county in general is that we all care about all of our kids. And so, we feel an obligation to make sure that Northridge does a good job handling this process as much as we want Granville to handle this process. So we will work collectively with all the superintendents because all the school districts will be implicated or have implications for whatever they have to do for their residents. If you look at those circles, all of Licking County will be impacted.
One thing specifically about this chamber work is, first of all, I'm very thankful that they had a head start on this, having started this process a year ago, as well as the village of Granville and our township have done a fantastic job being forward-looking, and they've already put in place a lot of things to kind of help with this process. I can't imagine just starting now, trying to face what this development is, but I think we've got some things to do in terms of specific residential development. And I see the chamber is doing a lot on commercial. I'd like to kind of maybe ask you to take an action item to really synchronize so we don't double up there.
Mm-hmm.
If we can just kind of offload the commercial development horizon and calculations to them, and we can bring them that housing piece that we thought. I think that the more that we can partner as organizations, the more efficient we can be, and that way we can kind of direct, the most efficient resources to doing these kinds of numbers and calculations and things. That's one thing. It's great, again, to have them already started in this process, and I think there's a lot of value in synchronizing.
Yeah, they'll be the main driver of economic development, but we do have a seat at that table.
Yeah.
Because, from a taxation standpoint, Brittany needs to be at the table.
Yeah.
For TIFs or whatever CRAs they create to kind of handle the economic development aspect. But
And housing is the biggest for us.
And housing is the biggest for us. But I think what's nice is everybody coming together saying, hey, we need to think of the impact on the schools. We have to think about economic development. We have to think about our residential tax base and make sure that, the burden isn't 100% on them, but that we take advantage of this commercial opportunity that might be present. That's what you want to hear. I think we've done some things proactively through the township, through green space and other things that will protect certain lands from rapid development. And that's what you have to buffer against.
Well, that's a great overview. Is there any other comments or thoughts on growth in general or questions?
Well, I'm curious as to having more, the importance of having board members at the table in these discussions. I understand that Jeff and Brittany are really involved. I wonder if there's any suggestions you have on ways that board members can build relationships with either, sort of like how Mr. Kessler was talking about having Dennison and the board at the table. I don't mean like a formal, but how can we become more involved as board members? Because while it's good to be able to see the superintendent at the event, and obviously the treasurer's work is super important, but how do we also make sure that
we show how important it is and how important our schools are and what we really want, because we can say that we don't want rapid development, but how do we really make sure that everyone is hearing that? And if there are more of us there, I assume it will be heard more clearly.
I really enjoyed going to the retreat, the village retreat, and there's a lot of public forums these days that are completely open to public as well as board members.
No, I
Really
hear
just
that,
kind of
but I
make
don't,
connections,
yeah, I don't
you know?
really, I don't, in my day-to-day, the reason I heard about this luncheon was because I had called a friend who was involved, but I called her for something completely different, you know what I mean? Like so, how can we become more, how can we be more in front of it?
Active.
Yeah.
Okay. So, two things. One, you have to be cautious, because if multiple people show up and you're representing the schools, we can violate sunshine law. So we have to make sure that we coordinate
Right.
if we do
Yes.
that.
Okay,
If you're there representing the school.
If you're there as a public listener.
If you're there as a public listener, that is totally fine. You're not identifying as a school district board representative. The other side of that is you're not technically a board unless all 5 of you are together. So speaking as a representative is a challenge, because you have to have the kind of the blessing of the board to make whatever statements you're going to make. But if you're going there as a public member and then just participating, but you have the background lens of being a board member, I think that's totally appropriate. So, Thomas didn't necessarily share at the village planning session. I did, as a representative of the school district. So, but I think it's important for you, I agree with you, it's important for the board to have engagement opportunities, and maybe we can share a little bit more about some of the things that are happening. Some of these things are happening relatively quickly. Tomorrow I'm meeting with the Columbus Compact, which is Columbus State and the Educational Service Center of Central Ohio, to talk about, the Intel programming aspects. And so meetings are happening quickly, but if there's interest, we can share those with the rest of the board.
I like your comments, Cecile. One thing we might consider is whether we would want to have a board representative connected to some different organizations. For example, should there be a board member who is connected with the village council and attends either regularly or occasional meetings there? The township trustees, MORPC, the chamber, and by having a board representative just attend those meetings, not to speak on behalf of the board, just might let us share information better. So if the board representative from the township came back and said, hey, this is what I heard from the township trustees or a meeting. It could be that having a more committee-like assignment like that, although I don't want to commit us to bi-weekly meetings of the village council that talks about planning sessions, but those are wonderful things, but maybe there's a way that we could formalize or organize a little bit if you or others on the board are willing to have a connection, just to have more visibility like that.
Maybe we can reach out to each of those institutions and ask them to reach out to us when there's a big event or something specifically related to Intel, so we're not showing up to every meeting.
Let me do some thinking on it, and I'll work with Brittany, and we'll come up with a plan to kind of take into account what you're thinking.
Okay, because I do love the small town aspect of the fact that, I have friends on village council, I have friends on, the trustee, but then thinking about Union Township, I don't know anybody there, so should I make a phone call and meet with someone just to have coffee? Or is it, Fred's best friend is the trustee, and so it wouldn't make any sense. How do we kind of communicate that, again, without breaking sunshine laws, but also making sure that the presence of the schools is still, because I think all public officials come with, so the schools are most important to me, but, township trustees, their most important thing is whatever, firefighting, roads, whatever it is. So how do we make sure that schools are being represented in these different areas, not just by you guys, but in addition.
Yeah, that's what you pay for.
No, I know, but in addition.
Yes, if you could think or just come back with a plan or some questions or things like that, ways we could do that. I really like that idea. And I've really benefited from talking to a lot of people these days about development, about zoning. I've learned a ton about zoning in the last month or two, right? About real estate prices, that's going to have a big impact. The more people you can reach out to, if you know a realtor, give them a call, talk to them about the situation, if you know somebody on a planning commission, right? If you know somebody at MORPC or whatever, those are different organizations that are deeply involved. So the more you kind of proactively kind of reach out, the more you can learn. But I think some kind of organized way that the school board specifically makes sure we're kind of hearing what's happening around us is going to be really valuable. That's a good idea. Thanks. Any more general questions? Oh, go ahead. I guess I have kind of a couple of, do you have anything?
No, I was just saying I would have liked to go to that luncheon, but I didn't hear about it until after it happened.
Yeah. As I kind of think about this development and strategic growth we're about to go through, and having sat through the retreat session, this is really powerful, right? We're right at the bullseye of this thing. And I don't think we're going to go from 17 to 200,000 residents in Granville. That's certainly not the case. But if you look at this part of Licking County, it's going to go through some really big changes, right? In the next 5 years, 10, 20 years is going to be a huge impact. And as I think about the various organizations and communities and things like that, I think Granville Schools is really solid, right? I think we're going to do very well out of this. I don't know exactly what that path looks like, but we've got a history and a legacy and a culture of great education, right? And like there's a big plaque down on Broadway that talks about that for the last couple of 100 years, how we've been a center of great education. And I don't see that changing with this growth. I do see numbers changing. Numbers of real estate value is going to be really different. If you look at the prices of real estate in the last year, if you look at the cost of open land, or if you look at the price of a starter home in Granville, the last couple of years it's like doubled, right? And that's going to happen a couple more times, right? And that has a big implication for our economics that we really need to understand with some good case studies about how does that play out for the schools. What are the limits of enrollment and housing density? There's been some good studies done, and I think Granville is far ahead of most of the surrounding communities in terms of understanding our land use. And we have some zoning now that's appropriate for the school district, but how does that get controlled? And even within our current zoning, there's a lot of buildable land, right? And it's now, farmed. It's now owned in large parcels. But if you look at Union Township and Granville Township and a 5 or 10 acre minimum, right? There's a lot of housing out there. We have a specific issue in Newark, right? The school district boundaries that cover Newark. So we're going to see not just a little bit of incremental growth in enrollment, we're going to see a lot of enrollment growth. And that's not something we've sort of been faced with so directly in the past. But I think we need to get our mind around that and think about what that's going to be like. I mean, these average salaries for Intel are higher than the current median household income here in Granville. That's going to drive housing prices, right? If you have an attractive location that's close to the bullseye of commuting, for a lot of employees like that, it's going to have an impact that's significant. So, I really think that getting data, getting this task force up and running is going to be important for us to think about not just the next school we might need for a few more students that we know is going to happen based on things in Newark and so forth, but what's after that, right? We're a 2,500 student district. It's going to go to 3,000 quickly, and it's going to go to 4,000 not long after that. What does that picture look like for Granville schools? How is it sustainable economically with our different levies and tax structures and so forth? But again, the more I look into it, the more you're just kind of jaw-dropped by what's happened in places like Chandler, Arizona, and Austin, Texas, right? I see kind of Columbus as being a little bit of a parallel of Austin, right? Austin, has a big state school and became a technology hub, right? And Austin real estate prices are 7 times what they were 20 years ago. That's a big deal, right? And we're not going to be, Atherton, California, at the center of Silicon Valley with $10 million homes only, right? But we're going to be, a prime spot in Licking County for people to live, because we always have been, and our schools are going to continue to drive real estate and people's choices. It's just going to look a little different, and we're going to have to kind of ride that wave as we go. But I think overall, I think about the communities and the organizations, I think Granville Schools is positioned really well, right? And I know that our culture is so strong, right? Our fantastic education has always been a cornerstone of Granville, and I just don't see that changing, but it's going to be an interesting ride to get there. And I guess that's just kind of my quick summary of where things are headed. So the task force, as a number of people have volunteered to participate in that, and I'm really looking forward to getting that off the ground. Really looking forward to getting some good data to drive these things, to really open our eyes to what the possibilities are. And so we can think about everything that has to be done as a school district to meet up with the impending growth. Okay, any thoughts? Don't mean to monopolize that. I could talk for a long time on it though, because it's a big deal.
I'm very excited and pleased to see the township, the village, and the school district are being proactive. And as was mentioned earlier, the chamber study was being proactive before Intel became public. So that's very encouraging that we can make the right steps for going forward with this. And I think, I love the idea of how collaborative we're going to be, because I agree with Mr. Brown that this is going to affect the whole county. Obviously, our priorities is our school district, but the more communication and working together, whether it's with the village, the township, or the adjoining school districts, is going to be better off for everybody. So I'm excited about that. There's going to be a lot of challenges, obviously, with Intel coming in, but I think it's an exciting opportunity for not only Granville, but for the whole area. So I think we're in about as good a position as we can be as going forward, since we are going together, growing together on this.
So the first step is the approval of action item 10.01.
Motion.
Second.
So this is the contract with Cooperative Strategies. We are going to partner with them for a 3-year study of enrollment. So they will do an analysis each year as things evolve on housing and enrollment. Once they do capacity, they don't have to do it again. So they don't have to study that each year within the schools, because they know kind of what our facilities look like at that time. But this is the data that I think will provide some better understanding of what is the magnitude of potential growth. Mr. Miller said some numbers like, are we going to be 3,000? Are we going to be 3,500? That data will help us determine what the next step is, and this is going to be critical over the next couple of years.
It's really important data, but it's also very speculative. When we've done enrollment studies before and things like that, it's dependent on some factors that you don't quite know. And so it's going to be important to put variables on those, right, and have sensitivities to understand a low, medium, high, right, to understand, the implications of real estate prices on our property taxes. And I'm not sure if they're going to include income evaluations as well, potentially. Right, but that's becoming an important part of our revenue source, so it's going to be important to make sure we calibrate on what the income tax will continue to generate, which is going to be a critical piece of this moving forward.
That will not be included in their 3-year analysis. They don't do income tax analysis, but I think there's other
that and give them that information.
Sure.
Or coordinate.
Yeah. I think one of the tricky things is, because we know that it's so speculative at this point, and we don't know if we're going to grow, by 2,000 students or like 30,000 students, which obviously I don't expect, but we don't even have that kind of land, but would be in securing the land space for future facilities for us.
Sure.
So I think that the problem is we can't do that because we don't have the funding for that right now, but we need to make sure that we have enough space for school.
Yeah, I think the data will drive a lot of questions like that. How much land should we think about needing in the future?
based on whatever the enrollment data says that is likely to happen. And that's going to be a future conversation for the board. Yep.
And cooperative strategies background.
Yeah.
They do this for
They do this all across the country. Yeah, absolutely.
And they're local though, they're out of Columbus?
No, they have, well, they're national, they have
Columbus?
representatives in Columbus, out of Hilliard, I believe.
Will be tied in likely to some of the other growth things that are happening out this way.
Correct.
Right.
And many of the school districts in Lincoln County are working with that group as well. So
They did a
they'll have a
great
regional
example of it
regional
and so forth.
analysis.
I think it's really worth
Yeah.
it.
I also reached out, like through the treasurer state discussion board to see if there were other vendors that anybody recommended, and this was the resounding answer.
Good. Thank you.
And it will be paid for one time, or will it be over the 3 years?
We'll pay up front.
I don't know.
Yeah. We
But it's
actually,
okay.
yeah.
It, usually when it's like a 3-year contract, they'll bill us like once each year, but we could work through those details.
Like you learned
This
first.
is more locking in the rate that we'll pay for the 3 years. Right.
And the contract also includes like an hourly rate if there is additional services we need for them to go and look at things and so forth. It's codified in there, so. Okay, any more questions? Take the roll, please.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw? Aye. Ms. O'Day?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Okay, the next item is item 10.02, the approval of an agreement with Granville Schools in Lac to provide cross-check via Meta. I'll tell you what that means after you. Motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so you know that we are converting our student information system to PowerSchool, moving away from Dazzle. In the process of doing that, Dazzle will be our main PowerSchool will be our main conduit to EMIS, which is the state reporting system for students. And so this cross-check system makes sure that in the conversion, the data is going through the way that it's supposed to do, because it is tied to funding and other things that are critical. So cross-check is a system that looks at the data and makes sure that it is transferring properly. It's a relatively low expenditure of $2,500. So, but we wanted you to be aware that we are doing a double check on this conversion.
And META is?
Meta is like LACA, but for Franklin County. It's an ITC. Yeah.
Is this a one-time
Yes.
payment?
Changing accounting systems is a tricky thing, and it seems like it's a valuable investment to ensure that things don't get dropped in the middle there and we have good data going in, so. Okay. Roll, please.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Ms. O'Day?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw? Aye. Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye. Okay, the next item is a contract with Learning Inspired for self-determined learning.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, this is a contract with Learning Inspired, which through the pandemic, we've been doing a lot of work looking at project-based learning, the experiential learning class, Erica Mackley's work, Pam Bice's work that you've heard about. This is a contract to kind of look at self-determined learning in more of a deeper dive, looking at autonomy and agency in the student population and ways to build more of that within the general curriculum. And so, you know, Dr. Mike Nicholson will be working with us with the administrative team through the end of spring and then through the summer months to prepare for, you know, going into professional development and broader conversations in 2022, 2023.
Sounds wonderful.
Yeah,
They're really
it
cool
is.
kinds of transitions and things like that, but they don't come without a lot of work.
Yeah.
Right, and so the more we can, you know, support ourselves and extra resources we can bring in to facilitate these kinds of experiences, I think makes all the sense in the world right now. The roll, please.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Ms. O'Day?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw? Aye. Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye, thank you. 10.04 is the approval of athletic tournament worker pay rates.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. So this is an item, we we've approved, I think, some of these before, but I think this is the totality of the potential for athletic tournament worker pay rates. In the past, there have been flat rates that we've had to divvy out, and we wanted to make sure that it was consistent across all positions. Brittany and Josh have been working on workflow related to tournament pay. Good news is we have athletic tournaments that are generating revenue, so we want to make sure that we're being consistent with the controls that Brittany wants in place as well.
Is track higher just because it's usually a much bigger event?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we looked at that separately because it's a longer period of time.
Right.
So it was hard, it was a hard process trying to come up with, should this be an hourly rate or a flat rate based on
Right.
the event, and so that's what we laid it on.
It's not listed here, but kind of related to our public comment. Have we ever considered having a supplemental or a rate for administrative support for our athletic events? Or is there, typically, that a way to help cover some of our many things without a hire? You know, if you put an extra individual into our payroll, that has some implications, but is that included in here?
So we've done a few things already just from a supplemental standpoint to try and get help with the middle school program. This is really just compensating for Josh for time outside of, the regular school day that he is doing for these purposes. So you'll see like LCL tournament manager, that typically is our athletic director, or the site manager for central district tournaments. Those types of things are ways that we compensate Josh for outside of our parameters or our work time. But I think the broader question is, we've always been very administratively lean. We do have a lot of athletic and arts events, and as we hire a new high school principal, we run relatively lean, and that requires a lot of people to be at a lot of different events. And we're not gonna lie, it's challenging. So, and we all try and pitch in, and it's just difficult to manage all the things that we have, all the opportunities that are available. So, but this is something that's more from the standpoint of an accounting perspective.
And I guess my question, is there a model, like a substitute teacher model, if you will, where it's a sort of pay-for event for some parent to take a responsibility and be appropriately trained to serve as an administrative oversight when, the few administrators that we have are not available? And I wonder whether there's a way, short of hiring, right, to staff things in a way that makes sure that our students are safe and our, fans are under control and so forth.
Yeah, that would be outside of this action item, but yes, there are alternate ways that we could look at some of those coverage models. We've done a few things already, but I can come back and give the board a better picture of how we do things currently, and that might help understand what a path forward might be.
Great, yeah. Thank you. Questions? The roll, please.
Ms. O'Day?
Here, aye. Sorry.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw? Aye. Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Thank you. The consent agenda is 11.01 A through C, D. A through D.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, a couple of things I'd call your attention to. On the second page, there is a grant from the Malashenko family for $12,196.52 to be used for the Land Lab goats. So that the student group that was here earlier was very effective in getting some funding. So that was something to celebrate, as well as all the other donations that we appreciate people giving. We have, the supplementals are mostly for spring supplementals and some of the standard items, but I will call your attention as well to some of the retirement and the addendum as well, which has a resignation of Josh Levine. So we have Holly Wheeler, who's retiring. She's our occupational therapist. Ruth Ellen Cosman is a reading specialist at the elementary. And then Josh Levine is resigning, and he's our high school biology teacher. So a couple of people we want to recognize as far as their service to Granville schools.
some of it, long time service.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks especially to those longtime staff members and things. It's been a great contribution to our students. The roll, please.
Ms. Shaw? Aye. Ms. O'Day?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Item 12.01, approval of the February 2022 financial report.
So moved. Second.
Any additional questions or comments on the financial report?
No?
Ms. Shaw? Aye. Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Ms. O'Day?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye.
Item 12.02, approval of the resolution declaring transportation impractical.
So moved.
Second.
This is the first of a two-step process that we take each year for students. This year attending Marburn Academy and Liberty Christian Academy. This is a stipend that's paid to parents for providing transportation to these schools in lieu of us sending a bus due to the limited number of students attending each of those schools. Any questions or comments?
I'm sorry, where is Liberty Christian Academy?
That is a great question, Jen.
I can Google it.
So each year, Kim actually drives the routes.
Right.
When there's a new school, and even sometimes it varies from year to year, because it actually has to be within 30 minutes, which is interesting rather than miles, because minutes can vary.
Refugee Road in Etna, about, 20 minutes away.
I just was curious, I'd never heard of it, so I knew.
So can you just remind us again why we are paying for students to go to a different school? I mean, we're not paying for the transportation part of it.
Yeah, we're required to provide transportation for all resident students.
Okay.
So.
And these students are going to
These
these
are,
other schools?
Yep, they're, because they have chosen to go to private schools, or it's a special education situation, a charter school, those kinds of things. It's a parent choice situation.
But we're obligated because they live in our, within the district.
And is there some kind of clause to say that with low enrollment, we're not obligated?
No.
Okay,
Well,
so,
what's the approximate cost
State law.
of transportation or
And
the
what's the-
stipend that we offer to other parents to make this annual
It's
day ride?
impractical for us because
So,
Yeah.
There-
Well, there's there's two conversations going on,
Yeah,
so
sorry.
let's finish your question. So, yes, we don't have to transport them, but we have to compensate them. That's what we're doing.
oh, I see, okay.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so-
Thank you for
Yeah,
clarifying.
Yeah,
Yes, okay.
yeah. We could choose to, right? And we
But
can
then
choose to
our
have a
bus
school
route.
bus run one school bus to Liberty Christian or wherever and so forth,
Yes,
but that would be
sorry.
impractical. Yeah.
right, exactly.
Which is,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you for clarifying.
And then the amount,
Yeah.
they set it annually each year, and it actually changed, it went up in the new funding formula. And there's a minimum and a maximum, but it's around, I want to say, a little over $1,000 per student is what we have typically paid.
And it would be more expensive for us to hire a bus driver and run that route
Absolutely.
every day.
That's a good deal.
Right,
Yes.
yeah. Very good. The roll, please.
Ms. O'Day?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw? Mr. Miller?
Aye. I'd like to make a motion to retire to executive session to consider the employment of a public employee or official and to review negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. O'Day?
Aye.
Ms. Shaw? Ms. Deeds?
Aye.
Mr. Wolf?
Aye.
Mr. Miller?
Aye, and I'd like to make a comment that there won't be any action items following the executive session, so we're adjourned for the public session. Thank you very much for attending.